Hi everyone, welcome back. In the last video I shared some knowledge regarding autoloaders and why we need them, closing off with an introduction into Composer. Today I'll take it a step further, ensuring that any change we do is of high quality. Before we do that, I have to take a step back. Last time we started off in a local folder with code that was not shared with anyone. Given that I want to share on these topics in the light of professional environments, sharing code is the most important part of the job. My professional career started after CVS, so I'm not going to share anything about it. But the current version control system most people use is Git. You can run a Git server yourself or not have a Git server at all and share code directly between machines. In very large companies, you'll have an internal Git server, but most people will use a service like GitHub or GitLab. Given the majority of code lives on GitHub, we'll start there. If you don't have an account, make sure to create one. So let's start off with a new repository. Let's head to github.com/new, come up with an original repository name. Let's do example, mark it as private, add a readme, and for the sake of it, add a license, and then click on create repository. Now, if we click on this drop down and we copy the URL and then switch over to PHP Storm and do a git checkout or git clone of this repository URL, open it in this window, then we now have our local copy of the repository. To get to the state we were at before, I'll do another composer in it. And let's run through most of the defaults. Let's mark this as a project with an MIT license. Skip the dependencies for now, but add the autoloader and confirm both these choices. And yeah, we have the base of our project set up again. Let's look at the files that were just generated for us. So first let's open a composer.json. And this looks quite good, except for the uppercase of my letter there. And we did get a git ignore, which basically says whatever gets downloaded into the vendor folder, don't upload it to Git. So that looks quite all right. Let's do a composer install. And it's now saying, hey, there's no composer log file, which is correct because this is the first time we're running a composer install. But there's two scenarios where you want to either commit this log file to Git or don't commit it. And what I keep as a general rule is to always include it for projects. So if you're sharing a project and a set of dependencies between teams, then you add it to Git. But if you're creating a library that's compatible with a lot of versions of other dependencies, you don't include the log file. Okay, so let's add these three to Git. So we do a git add. And there's obviously shorthands for this, but I'm showing you this right now. And then let's commit them with the correct shortcut. So set up composer. And then we do a commit and push. We push it. And if we now switch to our repository and refresh the page, those files are now here as well. Let's close all of this for now. Now the first thing we need to do is make sure that everyone that works on this project uses the same PHP version. There are a bunch of new features added in every new release and some old features and quirks removed. So running in the wrong PHP version might result in issues. Composer can enforce on installation that the correct PHP version is used by adding a requirement. Now what I see happening a lot is the requirements being directly edited into the composer.json file. But as you can see, that doesn't update the log. So let's not do that. But instead, let's go to the terminal and do a composer require of PHP. And let's allow any version greater than 8.3, but smaller than 9. Now you can see the dependency being added here and then also in our log file. And this also shows why you shouldn't update it, because you can also edit it in here, but then you need to also recalculate the content hash. Okay, and now let's make sure that this is also set. Let's commit and push our changes. So in this case, we set a required PHP version composer and then push that Now we haven't actually run a composer install again, so let's do that. And everything looks fine, but if we do a composer validate, we do actually get an error because we didn't set a description, which is required. So let's set that right now. Example. And you can see it actually updated here. It's not in the right order, but now if we do another composer validate, it says the composer file is actually valid. Now imagine we were working in a team. Even though the composer install command still works, we technically have an invalid file. We can prevent that by checking the validity in a pipeline. Every platform has its own name for it, but with GitHub it's called GitHub Actions. So to make sure our pipeline or GitHub Actions work, let's revert this for now. So we still have the error. So if we do another composer validate, the error is back. And let's close all of this for now. Now to create an action, we create a new folder in the root of our project called .github/workflows. And let's create a YAML file in there. We call it quality YAML, add it to Git. We add a name. In this case, it's just going to be quality. We do have a key for on, which basically says when this happens, I want this workflow to run. So we want to have it on push for all branches. Let's just keep main for now. Let's do it on pull requests. So types opened and synchronize. Also on branches main. And let's do a workflow dispatch so we can actually manually run this. And then we need to create a jobs key, which basically says, hey, these are the jobs we want to run. So for now, we only have one composer validate. I'm very good at typing today. So we need a name, validate composer.json. We need a runs on. Let's do Ubuntu latest. And in there, we define steps. So our first step is going to be checkout code, which basically uses a predefined action for checking out code. Let's do v4. Then we do a name setup PHP. We need to define which PHP version we're going to use. And we also use a predefined action for that. With some variables. So we do a PHP version of 8.3. We disable code coverage. I'll come back to that later. And then our final step is actually running the composer validate. So let's give it a composer validate name. And then we actually execute the command composer validate. Now I didn't tell you about the strict parameter, but we add it to there as well. And now if we commit and push this code, and switch to GitHub, it's gonna take a while. And it's not running. Ah, there it is. We can actually look into what's happening in this action. And now you can see it fails on the composer validate because the description is missing. Let's quickly fix our description. Commit the change. And now if we switch to our workflow, pending again. Let's see what's happening there. And now our workflow passes, so we get a green check mark here. There's one more thing we can check with Composer. Let's say we have a class in the source folder and it's in a namespace, but the namespace doesn't match the one we have configured for our project. So this one is an example, but the one we have configured for our project should be prince_frank \example. So we can actually check that. For that we run composer dump autoload --optimize --strict PSR, and then you'll see that this actually results in an error. Now let's close everything, remove the file, also close the terminal. If we add it to our job section here, so we copy the existing one, we rename this to check namespaces, also update this name, check namespaces. We do need to add another step in between because we need to do a composer install for this. And we do have another pre-built action for this. And then instead of composer validate, we do a composer dump autoload optimize. And then if we add a commit message and push our change, then it's gonna take a while again. And now you can see that there's two jobs running, and we're interested in the check namespaces action. And you can see that passed. That's it for today. Let me know what you thought of this video in the comments, and make sure to subscribe if you aren't already. See you in the next video.